It's Roger once again talking about the dragon in Morocco. I know. We've seen it 100 times, Roger. When are you going to get off of this? Well, I'm going to get off it when somebody else sees it. Nobody's seeing it. There's nothing, not a word about this. Not a word about this from anybody. It's just like it never happened. So I'm going to keep talking about it. So I'm going to tell you what you can do if you don't want to watch this. The part about the dragon, go out to about 12 minutes. At around 12 minutes, it starts into the ancient texts that were written about this, and it fits identically to what was written. That's my take of it. Okay, Roger, Mud Fossil University today with some exciting news. Mud fossils, of course, is proving everything in our ancient past is a little different than what we're taught. Now, one of the things is high-tech giants and high-tech equipment built our ancient structures. Now, this is a video I did a year ago or so, and I have a bunch of them about this, and then it talks about the different structures in the walls, and then how they built these particular walls and all of these, how they fit so nicely together, all of these particular stones. And the reason they fit so nicely together is because they were cut from a giant tendon slab using a high-tech equipment. And this shows the tractor type beam treads, and it has the wheels in the middle just like the other one in a flat spot, and then it did some mining over here and had a cutter to cut it. Now what they did was they moved that into the back excuse me, and they built walls. So that's what they did there. Now there's another one that was used, the same exact type vehicle, and this is the abrupt transition, which I probably showed you in that other tendon, that became clear. But that's what's inside of them, the abrupt transition. Now then they took all these stones. Well, here's another one that's the tire track of a four-wheel, off-road tire. It's Roger once again, Mud Fossil University, with a fabulous discussion today about White Cliffs Wagon Trail in Arizona. Alright, they thought these were wagons did this. Absolutely not, no question whatsoever, and I will show you what did do it. And this adds more evidence to the ancient builders, because I have other evidence that shows this was made by a vehicle, and I'll tell you the kind of vehicle and how they ran it and how it worked. Okay, it's quite obvious to see how perfectly consistent that slab is and how perfectly consistent those holes are. And I believe they're on both sides, and how perfectly cut this side is. Now, the tracks of the gods is what this video is. And these were creatures that were here with high-tech vehicles, and they were considered the gods of that day, is all I can tell you. All right, here it goes again. You see this stuff here? That is helping. It's digging around this corner. It appears to me like they forced it to cut through here, however that was happening. But it's quite obvious that that is a vehicle flat cutter. That's just nothing more than a grader. It must have been heavy and extremely heavy and cut down, and they must have known exactly where they needed to cut to plane off the tendon. And I'll show you what I have here. All right, this is selenite. This is from tendons, and these are you can see the blockiness of the tendons here. I think you can see how these are layered and how there are like little chunky spots here and there that they come off in these little tiny slabs and fibers. That's the nature of tendons. Now, the reason you see all this brown mineralization in here, that's the abrupt transition. You see it go straight across there? Now, this is exactly the same as what you see over here. Now, the reason this is not, that this is clear and that is not, is this was in some kind of geothermal area that had some form of chemistry that leached out all of the material in here that gave it its color, that the red and the blood and so forth, and that one didn't. So they preserve in different ways, but they're still the same thing. I have hearts and lungs that are totally 100% different, still hearts and lungs, but it depends on how they became preserved. Now, this particular style of excavator was used on flat tendinous materials. You see, it has tank treads here on both sides and in the middle, and just wheels, so that it could drive on flat ground, no problem. They would just hang here, and maybe they would twist them up, I don't know, but at least they're off the ground and they could drive on paved roads or whatnot. But on these flat tendons, they were excavating across here and cutting slabs from somewhere. Now, maybe over this side or that side, I don't know. Or maybe they were just going somewhere in this particular track. But this is the mineralization that gets cut. You can see that is exactly the same thing as what is in this selenite. It's the same exact stuff. So, and now again, this was the type of vehicle used on flat terrains. Now let's look at what they used in the wagon train area. Okay, this is the type of vehicle they were using to work in the wagon train area there, and the vehicle had these things that hooked off to the side and had spikes running around in a circle, and they could go up and down depending upon what the terrain was to keep this flat and running. And I believe they had a cutter blade here and a chute right here, and as they came forward to this direction, the cutter blade would dig in and take out a slab, and it would run right up through the machine and out the back, and they would cut it up and take it away or whatnot. It was like some kind of a tender limestone excavator. And when they were riding on the dry road, they would just go run these things both up in the air, and they'd get them out of the way, and they'd just drive down the street or wherever they were going. Now, they would cause cart ruts. Now, I worked with a guy from Russia years ago, and he was in Crimea looking at the cart ruts, and that was before they had the problem with Ukraine and Crimea and all that business. So I don't know whatever happened there, but it was a guy named Alex, and he was looking at these cart ruts, and I was trying to get some chemistry from him, and that's the last we corresponded. And like I said, it goes back years ago. But I do understand now. At that time, I was struggling with trying to understand. These cart ruts they're limestone, and they have actual separations in them, and that's why you don't see them running exactly parallel in a lot of cases, and then other cases you see them running parallel, because the ones that are the natural separations are not always parallel, and they're kind of odd looking here and there, and you can tell they weren't made by a cart, and other ones you can tell were made by a cart. They were using machines and carts and going out on this wet drying out tender flesh and this limestone stuff, and actually the actual flesh too was doing the same thing. It was drying out too. So they were going out taking this stuff, and I could see where they were actually taking out chunks and they were grinding them up, and that's what created a lot of the granite. Because I'm going to show you right now, granite is not a natural stone. You know, they say there's types of granite they say are natural stone, and there's other types they say are natural stone that are not. Some of them are, some of them aren't. I'm going to show you the difference right now. But these went out cutting tendons and flesh, wet flesh. And you see it all the time. There's handprints in the flesh. There's I showed lots and lots of videos about how they did this with pliable, tender flesh. It was right after the flood. Look, see, it says right here, Tesla 4300 BC Limited. That was the model year number, 4300 BC. That's right after the big flood. And then they came back and they had vehicles. I don't care what you say. I don't care how you look at this. There's not a person on the face of this planet can look at the evidence I'm presenting today and say, that's nothing. But they will. That's just the way they do things. It's not a problem for them to disregard anything that doesn't fit with the academic guesses that were all wrong. All right, what you should do is go up here and see giants and high-tech built ancient structures. And this is obviously up in my channel on YouTube. Now, what we're looking at here is these fitted walls, and they fit because they cut slabs and put them together. And some of them have rotting areas where the flesh has the bloody parts built into it. Now, what they did was they took high-tech vehicles, and they used them to cut slabs, and they just took chunks and they built them, and they went over there wet. And here's what they did: they took vehicles and they used this type of a vehicle that has wheels on it so they could drive on the regular roads, and then it had these tank treads in there that allow it to sink at a certain level and then go on the tank treads. Now, they were cutting slabs, obviously you can see on the side. And what they did with those slabs is they took them right behind this thing. And there's another set of the same vehicle somewhere else, and that is the abrupt transition that I showed in my clear tendon, it's selenite. And this is another four-wheel drive vehicle with tire tracks. So it wasn't just one little type of vehicle, and the one I'm going to show you is different than that. And here's when they use that other vehicle with the tank treads, and then they cut these slabs. They went in the back walls and they built these walls, and some of those walls were not built well, and they are rotting. I mean, they were built pretty good. I mean, you know, but watch, I'll show you something. All right, here's what I mean when I say some of them are falling apart. You see this one right here? You see that? It's starting to crack and so forth. This right here, you see this round spot? That's either a bone or artery or something's going on in there, and blood and all this is sort of deteriorating because that's soft. This is the tendinous material, or it might be flesh, I'm not sure, but it's much more structural than what this was. And they used, this is this piece right here, but they fit all together, and they did a lot of them. You use a lot of scraps over here for some reason on this particular section. Usually they're pretty clean. Okay, by the way, I want to make sure you understand, this Tracks of the God is by John Levy. This was published October 19, 2018. Now, a bunch of people had sent me asking about this, and I decided I'd go ahead and do it. And I also want to go ahead and mention that this selenite and a bunch of other stuff was sent to me by a good friend, Joe Dorius. She's a wonderful woman that is interested in mud fossils and was so kind as to send me this, and it's the abrupt transition of a tendinous piece of selenite. So thank you all, God bless you all, and this doesn't take away from anybody's beliefs. It is just what it is. Now we have to examine it and find out how it played into the history of our true history, because this is, I mean, things are so much different than what was spoken about, that, you know, it demands answers. It absolutely, totally demands answers, and they are being avoided. Now you drive down the car and your engine starts clicking and snapping and breaking and cranking and making noises, and you just keep driving and say, oh, it's all right, oh, it's all right, it's all right, I don't care, I don't care, I don't care. Well, sooner or later that's going to blow up in your face, and something's going to happen with this, because this is a lot more than just, you know, bumps in the road here. All right?